afraid that she's going to lose her reputation if she reveals to the world that she is like the other girls, that she wants to have a family and marriage and she wants to fall in love. But I've studied Louisa's life. She was incredibly lonely, especially after Henry died. And then she had this fling with Larry Wisniewski, who was one of the real-life Lauries. That didn't turn out very well. But then she could not tell that to the public because she was afraid people were going to see her weaker. She was always really annoyed when people pitied her because she was a spinster. That has a lot to do with the way the story in Little Woman goes, because she wrote Joe's and Friedrich's relationship to be a wish fulfillment. And I always say this in this podcast because I think that's very true when you read her diaries. And she writes how lonely she is and how she envies her sister's marriages. Mm-hmm. And I think it actually was quite nasty for Louisa to say that her publisher forced her to marry Joe, because Louisa and her publisher, Thomas Niles, were very good friends, and he never asked her to marry her characters. And he didn't give her instructions about the characters. So it was actually Louisa trying to protect her own reputation.
And I do definitely agree with you in that idea of a wish fulfillment. You know, they always say, like, it's better to be alone rather to be with someone and feel lonely. Mm. So I can see why she would be like, don't pity me because I'm a spinster. I'd rather be alone than be with someone that would make me feel lonely. But yeah, like you said, it's a wish fulfillment. And I think it takes a whole other level of understanding Joe and Friedrich's relationship when you know that. Not until hearing and seeing your work did I kind of realize, like, oh, there was like a real life Friedrich, and like, oh my goodness, there is, you know, an age gap that is the same as Alcott and Thoreau and Joe and Friedrich. And so much of the description of Friedrich is based off of Thoreau. Like, I never knew those things, but like now that like I know, I'm like, wow, that it really is, like you said, like it was her way of being with someone that she wants to be with. And I think for most writers, I personally feel this way. Like some of the things I write, I'm just like, I wish I could do those things, or I wish I could meet someone like that or be that type of person. So it's really not surprising when I hear that for someone like Alcott, who has sort of been told by people that she is not conventionally attractive.
It's really wild because her fans actually said that to her face, that, oh, you're not as pretty as Joe.
And if you truly believe that she is 100% the Arthur avatar, it's like, well, that's supposed to be the same. But it's funny that like back then people said that Alcott is not attractive, and I look and I will look at her picture and I'm like, oh, I think she was very attractive. And I think people don't understand that when they think of things. Like, I think it was in a podcast you said, like, when talking about the actress that plays Joe in the modern day version of the 2018 one, they're like, she's not very pretty to be with Friedrich. And it's like, well, one, I think that actress is attractive, but also like you're missing the point.
They said the same to Katharine Hepburn, that she was too boyish, and well, Joe is boyish.
Right. Like, I think people don't fully understand that. And it's also dependent on the time period, because someone made parallels to Joe and Lizzie Bennet. You know, they always say that Lizzie's not attractive. Like, I remember when I got my mom to watch the Colin Firth version of Pride and Prejudice, and we were listening how, like, you know, people were saying, like, Mrs. Bennet is like, oh, Jane is the prettiest of my daughters. And my mom was like, I think Lizzie's quite pretty. I'm like, yeah, but you got to remember that back then, the typical norm of what is pretty is to be fair-skinned, fair-haired, blue eyes, fair on the lighter tone of things, rather than the sort of darker hair, darker eyed, or even darker skinned. I think that people don't kind of understand what we would think is attractive now was not attractive back then, regardless whether they really are not attractive or not. But it's amazing how some fans will be like, they're too pretty to play this part, and then others will be like, well, they're not pretty enough for this. And it's like, can't the point of the story be that it's meant to be these two people who have a good chemistry together make it work? Because one of my teachers when I was in college, I want to say it was Cleopatra and Antony, that she had seen the play. It was something of that kind. And she was like, I couldn't believe it because the actors were not attractive at all. And I was like, does that matter? Like, that was probably one of those moments where, like, I was slowly realizing I was demisexual. I was like, what does that matter when it's, like, should be what the chemistry between two people are? But, yeah, it's amazing how people are so focused on what is physically attractive that somehow equals to romantic attraction versus being, like, how two people connect that leads to a romantic attraction.
Yeah, well, that's the Laurie fans. Oh, well, many of them. That's not really a reason to be with somebody. So you just want to hook up, but
right.
Joe doesn't want to hook up with him.
And in my post, it was the one I made years ago of why Joe shouldn't be with Laurie. I made a mention of like how almost hypocritical it is that people say these things about Joe and Friedrich, but there's a lot of parallels between the situations, not fully, but like when you look on it on the outside of Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester, like people make comments of the age gap is not right or they're not attractive. How could they fall in love? But it's like, well, there's an age gap between Jane and Mr. Rochester, and in the novel, neither one of them are seen to be conventionally attractive. Many of those same people will go, oh, I love Jane and Rochester. They were so romantic. And it's like, pot, meet kettle, you know? It's amazing how people pick and choose what they want to like and what they won't like.
When I was doing the research on Henry David Thoreau, and I came to this part where it was mentioned that Henry didn't like traditional women, or that he kind of had resentment for overly feminine women, I was like, damn, Louisa would have been perfect for him.
Right.
And, I mean, there is the speculation that they had an affair, and I don't know if that's true, but he would have been perfect for him, at least in that sense, because, you know, she wasn't traditional, and she kind of also rejected some parts of femininity. Research on Henry and Louisa, and I was so happy when I find out all the real life Friedrichs and the real life Lauries, because it made me feel so validated. Because Little Woman made a lot more sense when I found out about it, especially the story about Laddie, because, you know, I think one of the reasons why Louisa liked to hang out with him was because it's almost like she always wanted to have somebody there that she could take care of. Was it then her sister, or when she worked in the war as a nurse, and then there was Laddie and she took care of him because he had tuberculosis. You can see that Louisa always had this very maternal side, that she liked to take care of people. That was our chat today. Christina and I will continue our discussion next week. This episode was sponsored by Skillshare, so you can get a 1 free month and access thousands of creative courses. You can even learn to speak German or some other language in Skillshare. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for listening. Take care and make good choices. Bye.